What can SNAP projections do when it comes to insurance? So let me give you a quick tour and then we'll actually look at this live example together. But it all starts here with the insurance module where we can click insurance and add policies or do a needs analysis. So let's take a quick look at what's possible under policies. If we click insurance policies, you can see I've already added one policy, a term policy for $200,000, but we also have the option to add multiple more whole life or UL policies. If I click whole life, what's great is you can actually copy in or import the actual death benefits, cash surrender values, and annual premiums from the policy illustration straight into Snap so you have the accurate year-by-year numbers going forward. If we go back to the planning page, we can also do an analysis on what John needs for insurance now and going forward. For example, we can click needs analysis and we can start to enter for John and his spouse not only what they need for income replacement, but also include what else, other things that are needed for debt and other expenses such as funeral expenses, education, and combine that with what other existing resources they already have, life insurance, maybe some investments in a non-registered account. What we find is most tools, when it comes to insurance, have this information fragmented across multiple software programs. We're hoping with Snap you can have all of this now in one place. Even better is if once you've done a retirement projection or plan or started a plan in Snap, a lot of that insurance information for the needs analysis will already be populated there for you. So let's get started and look at this live example that I have for John Snapper. So here we have John and Jane, and right now their retirement plan is looking pretty good. We can see their need of $85,000 every year, all of their investment accounts, and we can start to scroll down and see they're not running out of money. In fact, they have a little bit left over at the end in this scenario. But we do know there are some risks, and a number of them are pointed out on this page. There is some tax on estate owing, even in today, and we can see that number actually just continues to grow as they get closer to retirement. You can also see they still have some debt to be paid off, and we know they have kids and there's probably some education needs built in here as well. But let's go back to John and let's do a needs analysis starting for John. So we'll go to insurance, we'll go to needs analysis, and we'll select John here. And in fact, we're gonna do this just for John, so I'll remove the one for Jane. We'll call this analysis number 1, and we'll assume we've talked with this couple already, and we know that if something were to happen to John, Jane would only be earning $50,000 a year going forward, working part-time. But she would still, ideally, their family would still like the $85,000 a year going forward. And we want to do this analysis for the next 10 years. That's when they plan to retire, and they have, as we saw, sufficient savings for in their RSPs and other assets for retirement. Finally, we can decide a rate of return that we want to use, and then we can pick if we want to deplete these insurance proceeds or if we want to keep a principal balance available going forward. In this case, I want to look at the illustration as if we deplete them. Then we can move on to other debt and expenses. So there was some personal debt of $200,000. So we'll leave this at 100%, so that gets covered. And then we have children's education. I'm going to enter an amount here that we've talked about, which is $180,000 for their 2 kids. Then we have the tax on estate, and Snap brings that number in again, and we want to cover 100% of that. And then we can include any other expenses here, maybe some funeral expenses or other final expenses or other expenses that would go there. Then we can look at the existing resources. So we know right now John has that insurance policy through work of $200,000, and we'll keep that as some coverage there in the illustration. But he also has this non-registered account of $100,000, and in this case we just want to assume 50% of that is available for the needs for Jane. So now we're done. We can actually click save, and we can see what does this look like. And at this point, we actually might have Jane or John or the couple sitting with us, and we can walk through this together. For example, the conversation might go like, we've gone through the fact-finding process, we've identified certain gaps in your financial model, these need to be addressed, and we've used the tool here to quantify them. And we can actually look at this openly and clearly together just on the screen. So if something were to happen to you, John, Jane would need your income to be replaced, and for the next 10 years, and this is how much insurance would be needed to cover that. This is how much would be needed for the debt, for the tax on the estate, for the education and final expenses. Here's what we have right now in place. These are existing resources, and so there's a shortfall of, or extra life insurance required of $759,000. And we can look at this together and we can actually see if we've missed anything. And we might ask John, like, is there something else that we, some other need that we haven't covered? And let's just say, for example, there is, and it's John's parents, that actually John is responsible for the care of his parents as they're aging. And we can just go back to the inputs. And maybe rather than start one for Jane, we could actually do an additional one for John here that's just for the parents. The parents aren't earning any income, but to help, they need another $50,000 each year going forward, if in support if something were to happen to John. We don't need to cover the debt again in this example, or the tax on the estate, but we do want to do this for the next 10 years again, and we don't want the existing life insurance or the non-registered assets to be used for this purpose either. So we can hit save again, and now we can actually see side by side, here's what's needed for Jane, and here's the additional amount that's needed for the parents. And John may want to decide, and maybe even look at other alternatives if we increase or lower this amount. In a lot of programs, this would probably end right here. And we'd look at what the needs are today, but actually with SNAP, we can dig into the details and see how this need changes going forward. So we can click See Details, and we can see, okay, the parents needed $50,000 this year, but we're adjusting that for inflation each year. But as the years go on, there's a lower number of years where insurance is needed. So we can actually see this 458 goes down every year, and by age 63, this number gets quite small. We can see the same thing for the analysis for Jane, that as they're paying off their debt, that number is going to get smaller as well. And if there continues to be a need for life insurance, perhaps that presents a reason for a permanent insurance policy. So let's wrap that up. We've got our options. We'll assume John has decided to go with one or both of these, and we want to finalize this in a report. We can click Report, and if we've already done a financial plan for John, and this is kind of part 2 of our discussion, we can actually just include that insurance analysis with the rest of our financial plan. What may happen sometimes, though, is that you haven't built or completed the plan yet. And in fact, we just want to highlight to John our work that we've done on the insurance side. So we can include the cover page, our note to the reader, and maybe then we just include our insurance section on insurance and our recommendations at the end. And we could go to the recommendations tab and type in some comments there. So for example, we may add something about how we got to this conclusion, that we worked together. You said you had this, and we recommended this, and you chose this. And there's a gap, but we're going to be revisiting this annually going forward, and our office is going to reach out to you for our next meeting. Something maybe like that. We could have that here saved as a template, and then we can preview the report and make sure everything looks good. So of course we can change the logo and the name of the report in the background. That'll be our note to the reader, and then we'll have our details on the insurance. And so here's our 2 options for the need, and here's the details of those needs going forward. So we'll click Generate as PDF if everything looks good. And once this generates, we can download the PDF and actually have this available to print or just to email to John right away, perhaps even while we're meeting with him. So this will give you a quick preview of our report and what that looks like. So the first page will show what he currently has for insurance, which is that need through work, that policy through work, and also put side by side with on there. Here's the taxes payable on the estate and the debt. And of course, the other needs are going to be highlighted around the income replacement and the debt again here. So that'll be our report. And if there's any questions about this, just reach out to our team. If you need help customizing the report or getting it to look a certain way, we're happy to help. There's a number of options. And finally, let me just point out where support is so you can reach out to us if any questions. So if you're back on the planning page here, at any time, click Help and don't hesitate to get in contact with us. At the top of the page is our number. This 188 number will get you to someone on our team. These are our hours. And we'd be happy to help. And with your permission, we can look at your projection together and answer any questions. If it's after hours or you just want to look at some more tutorials or case studies that we have here, just type in insurance and you'll get all of the options that will help you look at whole life and permanent and any other tutorials we have here. I'm going to leave it there. This is Riley at Snap Projections. Feel free to reach out to me or our team. I'm Riley at snapprojections.com. Thanks.